Thank you for tuning into the You Own the Experience podcast, episode 6, where we sit down with Andy Moss, CEO and co-founder of Mforce Staffing, as well as a staffing technology tool, 3D-IQ. We are about 3 weeks into the corona pandemic, sheltering in place, and you can clearly hear that Andy and I are missing sports as we talk a lot about them during this episode and how that relates to staffing. In particular, why hiring people who have played individual sports helps create a mental toughness or grittiness that is vital to being a staffing pro. We also talk about ballerinas and why they're pretty badass, so stay tuned for that. All that conversation leads to a great interview about staffing, recruiting, and technology. Please remember, guys, to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen, and hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Andy, man, thanks so much for being on today. How's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Just to be clear, guys, we are recording on April 1st of 2020. We just earlier this week got news that we will be quarantined in place. Basically, I'm in Miami. Andy's in Tennessee, I think in Knoxville, right?
That's correct.
I know I'm going to be in place until about May 7th, which makes me happy to know that we're going to be sheltered. With that said, we are recording on Zoom and there might be some audio issues. So just to kind of give you guys some forewarning, but more importantly than all of that context, we have Andy Moss on, the co-founder and owner of not only the staffing firm Mforce Staffing, but also a brand new technology for the staffing space, 3D-IQ. And I'm going to let Andy give a quick elevator pitch for those two companies. So Andy, go ahead, take it away, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me again, Rob. I just appreciate the time. I have been in the staffing industry for about 25 years, and I started Mforce Staffing about 11 years ago. And we're in the tech space, engineering, IT, manufacturing, automotive in East Tennessee. Kind of a boutique, as most agencies are, specializing in more the tech side. About 2 years ago, I started 3D-IQ with one of my marketing directors here at Mforce. And our mission is to basically change the way we submit resumes. I was very displeased with, as a service industry, how we present resumes to our customers because we weren't getting feedback. They look like crap. We wanted to solve all that. So we came up with 3D-IQ. Worked for us. So now we market it, and now we're in Bullhorn Marketplace and just off and running.
That's awesome. And I've been doing some work with these guys talking about 3D-IQ because as someone who's used Bullhorn to submit candidates, it's a lot nicer when the submission process happens as an HTML with a thumbs up and thumbs down so you can get faster feedback, guys. We don't need to get too deep into that, but definitely something to think about and as a core competency for improving definitely professional IT staffing firms. So give a little quick plug for you guys. Andy, we are in the midst of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in the US. I want to quickly cover, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of what we normally talk about on the podcast, what you guys are experiencing in Knoxville as a business or as two businesses. So probably some really great insight from you.
Well, I think as owner of two businesses, we are intertwined in just personnel. We are two totally separate entities in the way our systems work. But again, it's affecting both our companies. It's unfortunate that, it was just going just gangster, just both the staffing and the software. And then all of a sudden we hit this wall of COVID. I think everybody's dealing with it. We're all trying to navigate it. I think the government is doing their part of trying to help and uplift that. We're all trying to take advantage of every avenue there. Here in East Tennessee, we're not hit as bad as New York, South Florida, some of these other hot spots. I think we're probably looking at May 1st, first week of May, before it really starts affecting us in the East Tennessee Valley. Trying to solve the problems of all this. Our clients are still billing. Our clients are still hiring, interviewing here in East Tennessee. So that's a very good sign. I've lost probably 10, 15% of my contractor staff, but in the whole scheme of things, I could be like some agencies, I've lost all of them.
So everything's just slowed down in general and you've lost about 10 or 15.
It's a hit, but it's not a death blow, but we're working through it.
And by the way, you're in your office by yourself, I'm assuming right now, recording?
Yeah, we're practicing distancing. I sent my entire staff a week and a half ago to work from home, which kind of new. Most agencies like to have them all in the office. This is our first go around with people working from home. And it's actually worked really well. We've had actually better production numbers with them sitting in their PJs recruiting than actually sitting and looking at me. So I'm pleased. Now that holds up. Great.
I'm a big fan of working from home. I think you can work at your pace and your style. And you know what? Recruiting is something that happens not necessarily during traditional hours. So successful recruiters might be working 6A to 8A, and then 4P to 7, 8P, right? So it doesn't have to happen all during the day. That's mostly just for managers to see their team and coach them.
I bet you'll see more companies adopt satellite recruiting after this than they were before because they're forced into actually giving it a run and see how it works. Makes you think why you pay rent. This stuff's great, but it's a cost.
Yeah, have like maybe 8 to 10 global cubes that can be plug and play and 3 to 4 interview rooms. So meeting rooms, like interview rooms, and move forward from there, right?
It's making you think. And I'm toying with the idea of having a smaller base office and more people from home, place where you can come and interview, but not as big of a footprint.
I just recorded a video. My wife is on week 2 of working remotely. She's actually in the living room directly that way of me. She's an attorney and she's billed more than she's ever billed because there's no one coming into her office or her going to lunch and messing around, like just like anyone in an office, right? Like it's healthy, but it's kind of detrimental to work. It's like the NCAA tournament is not as bad as March Madness or fantasy football, but there's always a little bit of the messing around or like goofing off or water cooler talk going on.
But our industry is like in recruiting is 24/7. You choose what times you decide to sleep and eat and take off. I mean, this doesn't stop because you left the office. And so how do you take advantage of that? I've always said one of the things I say is we fill jobs before 8 and after 5. That's where we beat our competition is before 8, after 5. Where do you take advantage of that? At home, on the way to work, on the way back from work, as you're cooking dinner.
Something I just thought about is, I started doing locums recruiting and that was my mindset, right? Like 8 to 5 is just, it's relevant. There's a lot can go on, but really it's more for business development, right? Even those guys should be calling before 9 a.m. and after 5 p to get the CEO or the hiring manager because they're busy during working hours. Coming into software sales, I just realized like, hey, I got to work 7A. I got to work 8 or 9 p. And you do. And I think that maybe one of the benefits that I had coming from recruiting into sales is that I don't give a crap about regular working hours. And I take that recruiter mindset into it. I'm trying to be working when it's relevant. So interesting. Great point too.
And in our software, we sell that across the United States and even the world and time zones. 8 to 5 in Eastern Standard Time, West Coast, they're on a different time.
Yeah. And I sold to Australia and I sold to the UK last year. So I was doing all kinds of things. I only woke up once at midnight to do a call with Australia, and it was only because it was like a 50,000 ARR deal. And I was like, I got to get up for this. Like, it's a good chunk of change. It's worth my time. If it was below that, I'd be like, no, you guys got to work on my time. There's some overlap at the end of my day where I could be awake and you could be awake and this could work. But only once I did that last year. The deal got pushed and I left Tearfish, obviously. So I'm not going to see that, but whatever. If you love what you're doing, you love the product you're selling, you don't mind making some small sacrifices once in a while. Okay, interesting all about COVID-19. I do want to mention that I do need to get to Rocky Top eventually and watch a football game. I'm assuming you're a season ticket holder.
I am. I've got a ticket waiting here for you whenever you want to come up.
Awesome. One of my wife's sorority sisters, they're obviously graduated a long time, but she's dating a former volunteer coach. So he was a GA at UT, and then he worked for the Falcons. So they try and make it like a whole group trip. And obviously they don't probably need tickets, but I might need a ticket, especially if you have one for me.
SEC football and tailgating is nothing better.
We tailgate for the Hurricanes. So if the Vols ever come down to play the Canes, we'll reciprocate the hospitality, man. Cool. Enough football talk. We are a little jealous that there's no sports because it is, again, there's nothing going on in the world. So the real focus of the podcast always is the people experience and how you hire, train, develop, and then use technology to create an incredible experience for not only your candidates, your customers, but also your internal staff. Curious, as someone who decided to go out and build their own software platform to make things better or more efficient, how all that plays together in your mind. And please take your time, expand out as much as you want.
There was a frustration. As you grow through the industry, you see industries around you change and adapt to technology, and then you watch your own. And as a staffing professional, we were not, as an industry, adopting tech like others were. Just flat out not. And so when you look at the submittal process, we sit here and we bitch about not getting feedback, about, it's a PDF, all this. And you're like, we create that. And the administrative task that my recruiters were going through to present a candidate was probably 20 to 30 minutes process of the write-up, getting the resume dubbed up, everything. And I looked at that, I was like, and I started to do the math. I'm like, how much time am I losing a day and frustrating a recruiter to do this? we can automate this. And then to lose control of the submittal process by sending a PDF and then bugging the, out of a client, give me feedback, give me feedback, give me feedback. There's tech out there that can do all this. But in our industry, there wasn't. I mean, there was nobody that was doing it. So that's when we got together and we created 3D-IQ to solve a problem Mforce had with time to get everything compiled. And then basically making websites for all of our candidates, giving our clients the opportunity to give us feedback right in the app, tracking everything, getting alerts. They're looking at the resume right now. And that just changed our world. We took our feedback down 40, 50%. And then the other stat that was amazing was the ones that didn't get it, we were getting faster feedback on those, 75%, just to know they weren't interested. So how many times we work on a rec and we wait because we think we got the perfect person, the client just doesn't want to give us bad news.
It's a lot easier just hitting a thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Oh, move on. This isn't replacing the conversation we have as humans. It just makes everything flow better in the business process to make money. I mean, we're seeing the direct results. Our customers are seeing that. And I've actually had fun with this because I'm actually changing a process that's been like forever. We just naturally just do what we do. And just because it's free doesn't make it right. I mean, just because you can dub up a resume free in the PDF doesn't make it the best process. You spend thousands of dollars to attract candidates, get them in your system, and you spend zero in your point of sale. That does not make sense.
It's like the cost of acquisition, right? But then maybe more of this way. It's like you develop a software and then you spend $0 taking it to market.
Some of the resumes we have that are fees could be 20 grand. Would you ever send 20 grand through the mail without an insurance? No. That's the process that we went after and we've been successful with it.
Got it. Maybe kind of focus a little more on people. What do you do training wise, or what kind of mindset do you look for when you hire? What's kind of some of the best practices at Mforce?
I love the mind of an athlete. I mean, that's for me, grabbing somebody that's competed, understands winning, understands losing is invaluable. The human connection is great, but if they're a competitor, we can talk about grit, find somebody who's gritty. But finding that individual that wants to go to the mat and battle, that's what I'm trying to find. And we've been successful in that. And it's not easy. You have to kind of go through several people because everybody will say, well, I hate to lose. Okay, well, let's talk about the time you lost. How'd you handle it? And in this generation, I do see some struggle with that. Everybody wants to be a winner, but we are in a tough industry in staffing. You've got to have some tough skin. Trying to find that individual that can deal with that is what I focus on. One of my best recruiters is a competitive dancer. I mean, she was a ballet. I would have never thought that.
They're tough.
The stories this girl tells me, I'm just like in awe. You think of the Dance Moms, that show on Netflix, it's true.
I'll give you some perspective. I wrestled growing up. I haven't done jiu-jitsu in about a year, but I've done it pretty consistently as an adult up until that point. Any kind of combat sport is probably the toughest sport you're going to do. I think wrestling is the toughest because having done jiu-jitsu, it's not gentle. People taking people down in wrestling is just very abrasive to the body. I consider ballet dancers and gymnasts the only people who put themselves through more torture than wrestlers do, or equal. Swimming stuff, it's not as physical in terms of like you pounding. It is very tough. I don't want to downplay any other sport. And all sports are tough, and the training you can do from is tough. But from a perspective of creating really resilient athletes, ballet sucks, wrestling sucks, and gymnastics sucks. And anyone who wants to challenge me on that, happy to have that conversation.
It's not the physical side, it's the mental side. As an individual competing athlete, mental side, I don't care if it's golf, tennis, whatever, is half the game. I played collegiate baseball. That's a team sport. You have to walk up to that plate.
You have the individual reward and failure, that feedback loop. You go out in gymnastics, you're the only person on the rings. You're obviously affecting the entire team. You're going to do ballet. Ballet is interesting because it's really a team sport, but you have to individually be excellent to get onto the team or to perform at the higher level. And I was going to ask you, kind of brought up the second question, do you like team sports people or individual? It sounds like you like individual.
We've had success with both. I think here recently, some of these individual sports like the ballet, I've got a golfer. It's intrigued me just kind of the mental toughness they have just because they have to grind. And it's usually a self-propelled. There's no one grabbing you and saying, hey, let's go. You got to do it. Obviously, football, baseball, softball, some of those team sports are great, but the individual piece has been interesting to see some of them thrive.
Yeah, I think the mental toughness is something that I experienced and was glad of. It made me scrappy. So I'll give you a quick personal story. I started wrestling when I was 5. Our coaching staff wasn't that good. I wasn't really dedicated to it. Around 7th grade or 6th grade, I just decided to stop sucking. I wasn't good. I wasn't bad. I knew I sucked compared to everybody else. So in New Jersey, where the private wrestling clubs were started, so there's a Flow Wrestling documentary, if you're not familiar with Flow Sports or Flow Wrestling, they created a documentary about the Edge and Ernie Monaco, who was the founder. I didn't go to the Edge, but I started going to competing clubs because they were available because Ernie created the Edge. And I just decided in my head, I was like, I'm tired of sucking. I'm going to learn how to be good. And then I started putting the work in. And if you want to talk about mental resilience, try not eating for 24 hours, 48, 72 hours, and then having 2 practices a day of the hardest sport you're ever going to do. And then trying to like fight through it. So if you're not sure why wrestlers are tough or fighters are tough, it's because they have to make weight and do stuff that you don't want to do when you are eating, having nutrition. But anyway, so I was at Weatherby Healthcare and I wasn't sucking. I just wasn't getting it. And I just started showing up at 6 a.m, going to the gym, making sure that I was having conversations with people when they were available, getting the leads that came in sometimes overnight, just doing whatever I could that I knew would work and putting in extra hours, and ended up doing pretty well. I just had to figure out a way to be better. I didn't want to suck. So I think that's kind of a relevant staffing story, right?
I had a mentor of mine. I grew up in the Aerotech model. I was 10 years with them and some of the best training I ever got. I would never speak bad about Aerotech. Wonderful organization. One of the things my mentor said is you beat your competition before 8 and after 5. But he says, if you practice your craft like you practice at my time, baseball at the time, he goes, you would be an unbelievable recruiter. And at the time, I wasn't practicing. I wasn't even doing anything to better myself in my craft of recruiting. And I looked at it different as like, what am I doing to better myself? What am I doing to get better? And I started getting there early before everybody else. At the time, all the leads came in from Career Builder or your alerts or something. They all came in overnight. So if I was there first and I shot the emails out, I documented they're my people.
I did that.
I mean, and we all chased it. But again, those are the habits that you learn. I just naturally started getting to work at 6:30, 7 o'clock. And it just became habit and I got better.
And this is why I thought I got better. It was because I know that I need to take at bats. So I'll use the baseball reference. Like, we'll just make this a very sports themed episode. I needed at bats. I wasn't having enough conversations to learn how to do the job. And I thought getting the leads would at least get me the conversations to get the at bats, to learn what I was doing or not doing to make this work. And you're the new recruiter or the new salesperson. You have to generate your own at bats. And if you weren't doing that well enough, like you weren't going to get them. And I was like, okay, I can't tolerate that. I need to have the at-bats. I need to have the opportunities. And, last year at Herefish, I was the only salesperson for 8 months. I got 250 at-bats, first calls, kind of how my talk track goes. I got to do every of them from enterprise to one-user shops. And it was so powerful. There's a lot of things I'm grateful for at being at Herefish. But being the only salesperson was just like, okay, I get every at-bat and I got to figure out how to make this work. Because number one, I wanted the company to grow. But number two, I wanted myself to grow. And I think that is, sales and recruiting are the same thing, right? Like you need to have the conversations to learn how to have the conversations, to how to build the relationships. Something I'm really grateful for.
It's a grind. And software sales the same way. I mean, it's so relatable. What we do to sell software is the exact same thing we did selling staff.
One of my favorite things to do was to tell the why. I make sure now when I'm telling employee stream, I'm always telling the why of it was created. Because I think that, number one, people relate to stories. So don't ever fail to tell stories. But people really related to the reason why Herefish was created. And they were like, yeah, that's exactly what I need to solve. And now I tell people why employee stream is. And they're like, yeah, that's my problem. I'm sure 3DIQ, when you're like sitting there telling them that story you just told us, you have the same reaction, right? From owners.
I'm doing the demos with Tim. We are owners of a staffing agency, talking to owners of a staffing agency. The first 15 minutes of a demo, we're talking about our industry. And I think there's a comfort level to understand we developed the software to solve a problem that we're all dealing with. And when they finally see it and they hear the aha moment, like, wow, that's why I did it. I didn't do it to make this money. It's not about the money. It's about changing our industry. This is my life. 25 years in this industry, you want to make it better, leave it better than you found it. we're trying to change a process that's antiquated.
It seems like it's such a small thing, but I think the idea of putting in perspective of you wouldn't send a $20,000 check through regular mail makes a lot of sense. Or you wouldn't develop a software and then not spend any money taking it to market or marketing it.
And staffing it, we say, if you're in it as long as we are, it's in your blood. And it just is.
Any person who comes to me, like any person I know that's good at any of the software technologies that gets laid off, like any recruiters that are like HereFish specialists or employee stream operational people, I'm like, hey, raising my hand on LinkedIn, like, hey, do you know anyone who can use this person? Because I'm sure there are people who are hiring that need consultants, either it's part-time or full-time. It's still in my blood. Like I'm still making connections. We have a marketing person who's a consultant at HereFish. I'm making introductions to her, to all these different people. You just kind of like that connector, right? Like you really just feel it, and it hasn't left me yet. So
passion for people.
Going back a second here, you going and selling to staffing owners, being a staffing owner, that means you have 25 years of experience and 11 years of ownership experience. Those are all your at-bats. Like those are all your learning what the problem is that 3D-IQ solves. It's just like me doing demos, right? Like I need to do all those demos to get the at-bats to understand how to have a conversation that's relevant to somebody. So we could take that and say for recruiters, like, do you find people that came from engineering also successful, or IT, like computer science majors, or engineers that don't want to do the engineering work anymore, more successful?
You know, we've never flipped an engineer into a recruiter. I've never had that work. I've never had the opportunity. Most of our recruiters are, like I said, competitive natured individuals that grind, but that are smart. You cannot substitute intelligence in our business. Smart individuals find a way to make things happen. They're not going to wait for it to come. They're going to go solve the problem and do it. So if there's one attribute or two attributes, competitiveness and then just smarts. I don't care if it's street smart. You don't have to be book smart, but just intelligent.
People intelligent. There's different types of intelligence.
I would say half my recruiters don't have college degrees. I don't know. One time, all about college degrees. I've got one myself. Not anymore.
I think that's the way things are going. And to continue promoting things that are relevant. Trade crafts, trades are super important. And that's what upskilling and reskilling are about. Not everyone has to learn how to code, guys. If you like carpentry work, if you like, I don't know if you like being a plumber, but they make really good money because no one wants to necessarily do that. I know very successful plumbers that are union, non-union. So college degrees, just to kind of reiterate the point, not the end all be all now. I know it's great to have that piece of paper. Okay, future of staffing. Maybe COVID-19, non-COVID-19. Kind of give me two pathways. What do you see for the future?
I think this COVID-19 is going to change our world here in the United States to where a lot of things that we rely on other countries for, we're going to start bringing home, which will create opportunity. I think, just like I said, how I look at work, my rent, do I have to have the big space? Can I work from home? Do I have to have face-to-face meetings when I can use unbelievable tool like Zoom or Office 365 Teams, Slack? I mean, people's eyes are now open to some of this tech that they've never been forced to try. And now we've introduced Zoom to probably half dozen of our clients to get interviews done. And all of them afterwards, like, wow, how do we fly these people in? We've been telling you guys this for years. They've never been forced to do it. And now they're like, going, I don't want to fly people in. I can have a great conversation like this, and it's fine.
I think in 2013, I was trying to get out of teaching, or 2012, I was trying to get out of teaching, and I started doing Skype interviews. That was my first experience with it. But that was pretty cool. Like, they used to fly doctors in from across the world for the first time to meet them. And like, I'm like, why don't you just video chat with them first so you don't have to spend all that money and take them to dinner? Could you imagine? And this is kind of like that first date scenario where like you realize you don't like the person in the first 5 seconds, and now you have to show them around the hospital. You got to take them to lunch. You got to take them to dinner. I know you've had a phone conversation, but that doesn't always mean when you get them in person, they're going to be good.
The tech is going to change our world. I think this COVID, bad as it is, there will be some good that comes out of it, and there will be just efficiencies of business.
So landlords, commercial-based landlords, got to be on the lookout.
Yeah. I mean, like I have 5,000 square feet. Do I really need 5,000 square feet?
Maybe not. Maybe we can put a test kitchen in there so we can get more Uber Eats deliveries, because that would be awesome. Some good food.
Exactly.
You could tell I wrestled, right? I'm always thinking about food. Just ask the wife. Anything else for the future of staffing tech? 3D-IQ, what are you guys seeing?
You know, when we speak at some of these shows, like you said, staffing tech, I think is an unbelievable opportunity if you are a owner to get to some of these shows. Staffing Tech does an awesome job. Engage. If you're a Bullhorn customer, most of these are, I think this year, going online, which is going to be how they handle that. But to see some of the tech that's out there, if you've not been to one of those shows, you owe it to yourself as an owner, operator of an agency to just try it. Take a demo, spend a week demoing some of this, and you're going to be amazed. It'll change your world, and because there's some unbelievable things out there that you had no idea existed.
To give some clarity, guys, Andy's talking about the Staffing Tech conference, which is really cool because they let you book 30-minute demo meetings directly with these partners. So you can kind of do a year's worth of evaluation in about 3 days. And that'll be online now. And then Bullhorn Engage conference, which was going to be in Austin, is now Bullhorn Engage X, and it will be 100% virtual as well. So let's just be realistic, Andy. You and I both know, we've been talking about it. Staffing's about 5 to 10 years behind the Salesforce ecosystem. So what I'm always doing now is I constantly love looking at sales innovations and technology. Like I'm looking at like sales enablement tools all the time because I feel like trying to figure out how they can wrap my head around them going to staffing and recruiting is relevant. So that's another thing. That's a little business idea for people who are in there and trying to maybe figure out a better way. Don't be afraid to look at sales tools. I know they're usually more expensive, but it's not tailored for staffing and recruiting, but it could be. And that's kind of, where Herefish kind of played. It was kind of like a sales enablement / marketing automation platform. I think 3DIQ does a lot of that too, where it's just speeding up. It's like a Panda doc for recruiting and staffing, right? It speeds up the offer process.
Well, everybody's talking about, well, this stuff's going to replace recruiters. No, it's not. You're making your recruiters better. Literally, if I can have my recruiters spend 20 more minutes times, let's say ours send 10 people out every day. Okay, so that's all new recruiting time. It's making them better, more efficient. It's not replacing them. You'll never replace the conversation piece. You'll enhance it. You're now using texting. We were always monitoring how many times we pick up the phone. Now texting, 90% open rate. We're sending 3DIQ links through text now. No one's been able to do that.
Let's wrap this up. We're about the 30-minute mark here. Try to keep it around 30, 35 minutes. How can people find you?
Just email me, andy@3diq.com.
For staffing and
anything staffing related or 3DIQ is the easiest email.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsors, EmployStream, Staffing Hub, and Great Recruiters.